name is Sue Maxwell. I'm here with Zero Waste BC, and I'm really excited about zero waste. And people often sort of say, well, what is zero waste about? And zero waste is essentially no waste that is getting burned or buried, because we are preventing the creation of waste. And essentially what we want to be doing is moving from a very linear system where we extract the materials from land, mining, forestry, whatever, and manufacture the products, and then we consume them, and then we have them in our homes for a ever-shortening period of time before we then end up putting them to waste. And so what we want to do is, instead of this linear system of material use generally one time, we want to start putting materials back into the loop. And you've probably heard some of that from Tanya as well, is making sure, like for example with organic material, you would want to take it from, you'd have your food that's produced on the land, it gets transported, used in your house, there'll be some food scraps, and then those would get composted, so eventually it should go back into the land, cycling those nutrients through in a way that emulates nature, and in a way that we had at one of our other tables an elder, essentially what people used to do, like my grandma, saved the materials, she respected the materials. Ancient cultures often too, it's hard to find archaeological evidence for some of them because they didn't use materials that lasted for a long, long time and didn't biodegrade. They did work within nature. So it's not necessarily new, but it's certainly important now, and part of that reason is because we're starting to bump up against those limits of how much material we can use and the way that we use them. So our ecological footprint within North America is quite huge, and certainly everybody cannot consume at that same level. We can't consume at this level anymore. We're starting to see that there's certain rare minerals or rare metals that we have between 10 and 40 years worth of supply left that we use for our communications devices and computers and things. We're starting to see the fossil fuels, obviously not renewable, running out of supplies of those. And we're starting to see that forestry as well, which should be renewable, but if we're not doing it at a sustainable pace, then it's essentially mining of the land. So we're running out of materials. We're also starting to run out of the energy, because at every step along that path of making products, energy goes in, and it's very energy intense for making metals, for harvesting those things all the way along. And so even if you were to burn the materials at the end for energy, the fraction of the energy that you recover versus how much you put in is very small. It doesn't justify not making serious changes to the way we handle our materials. It's also about social things. We have a society where we are, very comfortable. We've got all our needs met, and we have ever-increasing wants. But what we want to take a look at is, are we leaving anything behind for future generations for even their basic needs, let alone the ever-increasing wants? And I thought it was really interesting today to hear Ruben George talk about our spiritual gap, and sometimes I think that our ever-increasing wants are related to trying to fill a hole within ourselves. And so for some people it's shopping and consuming stuff, sometimes it's food, alcohol, whatever, but it's that spiritual gap that we need to fill in another way, so that shopping is not an activity or a hobby. Shopping is a necessary thing you do just to make sure your life functions. And I ended up getting involved in this because I decided to go back to school. I had worked in healthcare for a long time and went back to school and did a master's in environment and management. And I was looking for a thesis topic, and I came across zero waste, which I hadn't heard about, but when I learned about it, I was like, oh, this just makes so much sense. And I come from a Scottish family. We were not just using supplies willy-nilly. If my grandma came, we had 3 beans left. Those were going in the fridge, and we were saving them. And so it just made sense to me to do that. I'd also been traveling, and when you see other cultures where, there's people in Indonesia that we would consider perhaps not having a lot of stuff, maybe not being wealthy, but they had enough stuff and very happy. Like, one man, he's like, come and take a picture of my cow. He pretty much had his baby wrapped around him and his cow. Very proud of his cow. He had like a house with a little grass roof, but he was happy. I saw another lady picking up, she was the first one of her neighbors to get the scoop of cow dung on a street in Nepal. And if you gave a North American a scoop of cow dung in their hands, they're not going to be happy, but she was happy because she got her cow dung. And so it's really a matter of perspective. Plus, if you live with a backpack for 6 months, you realize I don't need a lot of the stuff that I have in my house. And stuff weighs you down. You have to store it, you have to have space for it, you have to insure it, you have to maintain it. It's not a route to happiness. It can take up a lot of your time that I think you could use better elsewhere. In terms of how to approach zero waste, generally you want to take a look at that whole waste pie when you do a waste audit and see what the waste is made up of. essentially it becomes waste once you mix it all together. But if you looked at it before it got all mixed up, you would have a good chunk of it would be 30 to 40% would be the organics. So you want to make sure you're setting up some composting systems for that in a way that cycles the nutrients. The rest of it often now is made up of products. Extended producer responsibility programs would take the responsibility of, right now it's municipal taxpayers and essentially the environment that pays for our wasting. You take that and you make those costs go back to the producer. And by doing that, to begin with, at least you're shifting the costs the right way. But what you can hope to happen is that as you reach a critical mass, because every province in Canada has signed on to a Canada-wide action plan to get all up to the same level of these programs. So, for example, computers and beverage containers and paint and used oil, and starting in BC in July 1st, small appliances, you'll be able to take them back. And once you reach the critical mass of all of Canada, plus Washington, Oregon, and California are also looking at this, then people are going to want to start to redesign the products, because they're not going to redesign them for the population of BC, but they will redesign them when you get a bigger group of people using these kind of products. Is it the ultimate solution? Not necessarily. It will really take an action-oriented, concerned citizenry that is engaged and paying attention and will speak up, because it is all too easy with greenwashing to come up with a solution that sounds good, but not until you really look into it do you realize, actually, that kind of sounds like the old system. And so you want to make sure that people are able to pay attention and know that. In terms of bringing it into your everyday choices, there's of course the pollution prevention hierarchy where you want to rethink your purchase. Do I really need it? Why am I buying something? I used to be a dietitian. I'd ask people, why are you eating? It's the sort of same thing with buying things. Why am I buying this? You want to reduce things if you can. Maybe you can share things, borrow them from a neighbor. My brother-in-law, he really likes woodwork, and he only needs certain tools maybe twice a year, so he'll go and rent them. There's a lady in North Van who operated a neighborhood share shed, essentially, where all the neighbors stored all their garden tools in her thing, and everybody had a key to her garage, and they would just go and borrow them. So then you, of course, you can repair things, reuse things, recycle things, but really think about every purchase that you make as being a vote. We get to vote on Monday, but like all the polling they're doing for the election right now, they do just as much research into what you are buying, why you are buying, what brands. And so even if, maybe organic shampoos don't have a certification process right now, and maybe some of them are weaker than others, by buying an organic shampoo, I am voicing my support for that kind of product, and that hopefully eventually they will start to create some standards around it, the same way they did for organic produce to begin with. So really paying attention to what you are purchasing and asking questions. Like if you're in a store and they offer you a receipt, say, can you recycle that? Start to show people that you are interested in these kinds of systems so that they will start to create those kind of systems. Because really, a lot of it is customer demand when people make changes to things. If you don't want a product that only is going to last 1 year, I want a product that lasts 10 years, 20 years, can be repaired, has parts, ask for that. And that's where we will start to make some of those changes. In terms of, and of course you can always volunteer with different organizations that you're passionate about. If you wanted more information, then I'd say the first one to take a look at is The Story of Stuff. It's a great 20-minute video made by Annie Leonard. It's on her website, storyofstuff.com, and it shows you how materials get used, and it shows you the links with all the other parts. So if you're concerned about mining, if you're concerned about forestry practices, if you're concerned about pollution in China, if you're concerned about people having to migrate from their homes, it's all kind of connected to the system. If you're concerned about citizen action, if you're concerned about proportional representation and how the government works, you'll start to see that it's all connected. If you're interested in practical things for your own home, I think taking a look at the Clean Bin Project, which is a great couple in Vancouver where they had a contest between themselves to see who could produce the least waste in 1 year. And they've got a website with lots of their tips and tricks about, basically you look in your bin and you say, how would I get rid of this if I didn't want to generate this waste? So they've got some ideas. If you wanted to recycle different kinds of products, then the Recycling Council of BC, they have a hotline and a website where you can call them and say, I've got a blank and I live here. Where can I take it? If there's some sort of system in your area.
Sorry, which one is that?
That's the Recycling Council of BC, rcbc.bc.ca. And then I've also been volunteering with Zero Waste Vancouver, or not so much Zero Waste Vancouver, but Zero Waste BC, but connected with Zero Waste Vancouver through Helen Spiegelman. And those groups have been a little bit more focused lately on trying to make sure that incineration doesn't become the greenwash choice for what to do about our waste, because it's essentially locking us into a system that still needs to generate waste, when what we really want to be doing is making changes so that we can actually prevent having waste in the first place.
Awesome.